The topic of today is you create your reality. Every single one of us understands that the way that we are created at God's image. And because we are created at God's image, therefore we have godly powers. And we are able to create reality just like God created the world. We can create our own reality. But before I start, I would like to share with you a little word of the parasha. In Parashat Toldot, we're going to see over here the beginning of Am Yisrael, the Jewish people, happening through Yaakov and Esav. This is going to be a very determining point for history, as we know that Yaakov is going to become Israel, and eventually we are called Bnei Israel, the children of Israel. It's going to be the whole nation is built on Yaakov. Question number one, why Yaakov? Why not Abraham? Why not Yitzchak? Certainly we're not going to ask, why not Ishmael and why not Esav? I'm sorry. It's the call of the hour. That's what happens when you're in somebody else's office. So, let's look at history, and I'm going to share with you an interesting point in really how history develops itself and how we become the chosen nation, the nation of Yaakov, and why. The Talmud says that Avraham Avinu did not merit to be that Yaakov, which eventually will be called Bnei Avraham. We're called Bnei Israel. Why? Sheyatsa mimenu Ishmael. Because Ishmael was a descendant. He had a descendant called Ishmael. Why Yitzchak, our forefather, the one that was ready to sacrifice himself on the altar, why didn't he become our father, and why aren't we called Bnei Yitzchak? Sheyatsa mimenu Esav, because the Esav of our parasha came from Yitzchak. Why are we called Bnei Israel, Bnei Yaakov? Because Yaakov is mitato shlema, all of his children came out perfect. They all came out tzaddikim, righteous. Let's explain. We know the Torah is derachea darchei noam v'chol netivotea shalom. The Torah is a path of pleasantness, a path of shalom, a path which is not a path of extremism. The Torah is not an extremist. The Torah is talking to us. Even in the letters of Torah, you will notice that sometimes you have big letters, like for example, the Shema Yisrael, the Ayin is big, the Dalet is big. Sometimes you have small letters, like in Parashat Vayikra, the Aleph of Vayikra is small. It represents different types of Jews. But the majority of the Torah is intermediate, because we have to take the intermediate path. We cannot be extremists. Avraham Avinu, with all his great qualities, was an extremist. He was an extremist in Hesed and kindness. And therefore, as a result, when you are an extremist, there is going to be a power of negativity which is going to benefit from this extremism. And that's why Ishmael was born. On the other hand, you have Yitzchak. He was an extremist as well, the polar opposite of Abraham, an extremist in self-sacrifice. He was ready to give his life and so on. It's wonderful. But it's a life which is going completely to the polar opposite. It's severity. Because of that came out of him Esav. Yaakov is the blend, the perfect blend of Hesed, kindness, and severity. And that synergy of both brings a level of balance and at the same time a level of power that you don't have. Imagine standing on one foot or putting your weight on one foot over the other. You're not, anybody pushes you, you're going to be able to fall. You will fall. If on the other hand, you are really well anchored on your 2 feet, then at that moment, people can try to push you. You will not fall so easily. So therefore, what happens is that it's not Avraham, it's not Yitzhak, it's Yaakov. That's the number 1 reason. Number 2 reason, Avraham did a Brit Milah only, he performed a circumcision only at the age of 99. He came from a father that did not circumcise, that was an idol worshiper. So he could not be the father that's going to father the Jewish people as we should be called upon as his children. We are his children, but not Bnei Avraham. Why aren't we the children of Yitzhak? Why aren't we called Bnei Yitzhak? Because Yitzhak Avinu, he did a Brit Milah at 8 days, but he came from a father that did a Brit Milah at 99. Why are we the children of Yaakov Bnei Israel? Because Yaakov was born from a father that did a Brit Milah at 8 days, and he himself did a Brit Milah at 8 days, which means that he separated himself from the mundane and already came from a much purer place. We will notice something interesting as well. The Rebbe notices Bnei Ishmael, the children of Ishmael, which are the children or the grandchildren of Yaakov, is the Arab world. The Christian world, where does it come from? It comes from Esav. Why? Why is it like this? The Rebbe mentions that in the music, you feel it. Arabic music is a music which is more in the tunes of chesed, while the tunes of kindness, softness, while Christian music, European music, is more in the tones of severity. I'll explain right now, you'll understand. Arabic music, for example, you will have a sound like la da da la da da la da 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 la ma ma ma, while in Europe, right, the Christian world, the symphonies, you have ta 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 ta. It's more something which is, we say in French, saccadé. I don't know how you say it in English, I'm sorry. Something which is more strict, like this. So we have Ishmael and the whole culture, a culture which represents chesed, even though both have blood in their hands. One with the pogroms and the other ones we know, we're living it today. But the Rabbi asked a question, why don't we find that most people that convert are not Arabs? Arabs do not convert to Judaism. Barely. Really. On the other hand, most of the converts are Christian. Why? Because they come from Esav. What's the difference? Ishmael did a Brit Milah at 13. Was born from a father that didn't do a Brit Milah. The body is coarse. It's coarse and it's not sensitive to real godliness, even though there's an extremism. But it's not in supposedly what's godly, but it's not sensitive to godliness in the physical sense, because it's not refined enough. And that's why, if you permit me to say, the lust and the sexual drive, right? When we refer to Egypt, we refer to Egypt and all these cruel people. It's referred to in the Torah as Eravat Haaretz, the nakedness of the land, because the whole, it's very driven by the body. On the other hand, if you take the Christian world, which comes from Esav, Esav is born from a father that did a Brit Milah at 8 days old. The body is more refined to feel godliness and to look for godliness. And therefore, most of the converts come from Esav and not Ishmael. Yaakov, which performed the Brit and is from a father that performed the Brit at 8 days old, is refined in his body, in his soul, and can be the father of the Jewish people. Concerning Yaakov and Esav, in this week's Torah portion, we find that Yaakov goes to get a blessing from his father. Esav as well goes to get a blessing from his father. When Yaakov approaches his blind father to get a blessing, at that moment what happens? The father, Yitzhak, says, I smell your odor, and I'm smelling the odor of paradise, the odor of Gan Eden, which God blessed. On the other hand, when Esav comes to get a blessing, at this moment it says, Vayecherad harada gedola ad meod. Yitzhak starts trembling with his whole body, shaking with his whole body. Why? Because he saw the opening of hell, Gehinnom, opened under his legs. There's a great Kabbalist, which is called the Ramah of Pano. And he says, according to Kabbalah, the following, that a person's thoughts, words, and actions actually create around him an atmosphere. If it's a holy thought, speech, and action, it creates an atmosphere of Gan Eden, of paradise. If, on the other hand, it's the opposite, it creates an abyss, it creates the atmosphere of hell around. That's why sometimes we find ourselves with people where we feel more elevated, elated, filled with some type of a calm and kedusha and holiness and a drive. You're around other people, you feel your energy is being sucked out of you. Thought, speech, action, atmosphere, space. When the Torah speaks, it says to us, "Velo taturu acharei levavchem ve'acharei einechem." Do not stray after your eyes and your hearts. What does that mean? It doesn't say actually the eyes and the hearts. It puts the heart before the eyes. Do not stray after your hearts and your eyes. The second Lubavitcher Rebbe asks a question and says, I don't understand. The Talmud itself says that when a person first sees, then he is attracted and he feels, he desires, and afterwards he does. That's how you break every diet. You go to a bar mitzvah or bris or whatever it is, and you see that beautiful chocolate souffle with the lava coming out of it. And even though you made a decision 20 minutes before that you're going to keep your diet, you see, you desire, you eat. Repeat tomorrow. Why, asks the Mittler Rebbe, why is it that it says first the heart, do not stray after your heart, and then your eyes? Because he says a person perceives with his eyes only what he desires in his heart. Which means that the perception we have of the world is determined by the way we fill our mind, what we fill our mind with. And therefore the Torah says, be careful, do not stray after your hearts. Meaning that we have a commandment not only to speak correctly and to do things correctly, but we have a mitzvah to think properly. And that includes thinking positive thoughts. The thoughts are potent. Your thought of a situation can actually actualize, it can actually transform the situation. To express the words of the Tzemach Tzedek, Tracht gut, sie wird sein gut. Think good, it will be good. How is that possible? It's possible because the moment that you think good, you are focusing. It's called, I would call it the spiritual NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, the spiritual power of reframing. When you have a lens and the lens is open, you see a lot of things. When you have a lens and it's closed, you only see one thing. That one thing, if you over-focus on it, it becomes the whole image. It's the whole reality you see. When you open the lens, you realize that that one thing, which was your whole reality, is only a detail of a much greater reality. The power of thought, of positive thought, of holy thought, is to actually have a fixation on the good reality. It's only 5%. That 5%, if you focus enough on it, you can actually make your lens focus in and actually make it your whole reality. And at that moment, the rest of the reality, which is negative, will disappear. That is the first step in creating your reality. Because our reality is what we have in our head. If I think a certain way, let's just say it. I always say, the biggest distraction is not the phone, it's not the internet, it's not the TV, and it's not money, it's nothing. It's your head. If your reality in your head is clear, then this is what you're going to see. So you can imagine when you have a whole generation of people for the last 20 years growing on social media, what type of reality they see. The only thing they'll feel happy is if they have that surgery, or if they have that experience, or if they buy this thing, completely subjugated to a world which is telling them they need what they don't. So the first thing is reality of the mind. Focus on the positive. When you judge somebody, judge them favorably. Don't judge. The second thing is at the level of speech. You look at a situation. Don't say, oh, it's a disaster. It's the end of the world. Nothing good will come out of this. It's bad. It's horrible. Use an expression that is positive. It's not good yet. It will be better. But look, there's an aspect that's good. I'm going to mention it. Speak to the higher situation. Just like when you speak to your children. You have a choice when you speak to your children. You could come into, let's call him Yossi's room, or Rivka's room, and say, You're such a mess. You're so disorganized. You're so dirty. Disgusting. Or you could go to Yossi's room and say, I don't understand Yossi. Such an intelligent, clean, organized boy like you. How could you live in such a disorganized room? You understand the whole difference. Because the word, just like God, Abra Kedabra, God spoke, and therefore there was. Baruch She'amar Vaya Olam. God with his speech created reality. With our speech we can create reality. And when we speak good about something, and we insist, and sometimes it gets very difficult. It gets very difficult to speak good about somebody else. It sometimes gets difficult to think and speak good about ourselves. But what is speech? Speech is what was hidden in your mind and your heart that is now expressed in reality and creates reality. And therefore, speech has the power to take out what is hidden and actualize it. And therefore, you have to be very, very careful with what comes out of your speech. I can tell you as a rabbi, I've seen people die because of words. I remember when I was a rabbi at the shul of Bal Harbor 29 years ago, a young 31-year-old father passed away. He was in a coma and he passed away after a few days. In the Shiva, the wife approached me crying and she said, Rabbi, in the heat of an argument with my husband, I was sick and tired of something he did. I said, I hope you have a heart attack and die. And it happened. And I could name you at least 5 or 10 examples of different situations that the way people spoke, that's how they created their reality. Now, of course, you can live a holy reality. You could have holy aspirations. We'll talk about that after. And then there's the level of action. Your actions are very important. Your thoughts are important. Your words are important. Your actions have an effect. And if you transform your actions, you actually are able, with action, as low as action is in comparison to speech and thought, actions have the power to take your emotions and put them in the right place. I was talking to somebody this morning. He said that he feels a little depressed. What should he do? I told him what I learned from one of my mentors, Rabbi Mendel Futterfast, which sat in Siberia for 14 years. I went with my friend and I asked him, Rabbi Mendel, I asked him in Yiddish, was is a good achlot zu nehmen auf sich? What is a good resolution to take? We all want that key resolution, the resolution, a birthday resolution that's going to change and transform our lives. What is it? And he said it before Nike. He said the best achlot is ma'aseh b'poel. The best resolution you can do is just do it. Action. Stop talking. Stop thinking. Do it. Once you do it, you're immersed in it. Once you are immersed in it, your feeling will follow. You will be rejuvenated. That's how you create reality. But in order to create that reality, you need to have a purpose. You need to know your mission and start acting upon it. Start realizing your mission. Start actualizing your mission in thought, speech, and action. And automatically you will get the energy and the blessings from Hashem that you need to do it. To conclude, I'd like to conclude the story from Rabbi Kogan. Rabbi Tzvi Kogan, Zecher Tzadik V'Kadosh Livracha, which was killed this past week, was in the Israeli army, got married 2 years ago, was killed at 28. His wife is the niece of Rabbi Gabriel Holzberg and Rivka Holzberg, which got killed in the terrorist attack in Mumbai 16 years ago. On the day of his wedding, he decided to wear the coat, the wedding coat of Rabbi Holzberg, who got killed 16 years ago, on Kiddush Hashem, for the sanctification of God's name. Somebody asked him, why are you wearing a coat that was already worn? Why don't you wear a new coat like every groom? He said, if I have to die, I would like to only die al Kiddush Hashem. I want to die sanctifying God's name. And he did. But moreover, he did something better. He lived a life which was al Kiddush Hashem. He lived a life where he knew exactly what his matara, what his purpose is. What is your purpose? What is your contribution to the world? Today there's 6,000 shluchim around the world, transforming the world, inspiring. And I'll put in a few minutes a video that I want to share with you. It's amazing. 6,000 people, amongst them many which go to places that don't have schools, don't have mikvahs, don't have kosher, have nothing. And they make it. They make it with nothing by being themselves something, by thinking it, by speaking it, by doing it. It's our time to think it, to speak it, to do it. It's your time. So let's do it.